Hello, Legacy Story listeners. This is Kua here today. Maria's here with me, but I have the honor of doing today's intro because we have such a special topic this week that is near and dear to my heart. Maria and I are going to have a conversation about interior design, about decorating, about like home life and the objects that surrounded us when we're growing up, and really what it looks like for us now that we have our own homes and our own families. So I think that this is going to be such a fun topic as immigrant woman to dive into. What do you think, Maria?
I'm so excited. I was actually like Googling words and trying to translate it because I'm like, oh, I remember this when I was little. Oh, I remember like, oh, this is so it was so sweet to like do this episode and remember all this stuff.
Yeah, I
So
completely agree. So with most of our episodes, I feel like we always start like at kind of like the beginning. Let's just say like, okay, what was it like for us at home? Like what's interior design when we were growing up? Um, and I think that was the perfect segue, what you were saying about looking up, like, oh, what's the word for this? So I guess I'm feeling like the urge, like, okay, I can start this. I'm going to start this. And then I want to hear what Maria has to say. So I've been thinking about this because we've actually had the topic, like this topic picked up for a couple of weeks now. And when you first brought it up to me, Maria, I'm just like, what are you even talking about? Interior design, like being an immigrant, like child, there was no such thing. And even like, right? Like, and I'm thinking about my parents too, like, they, back in their home country, there was no such thing as interior design. Like, they basically lived in like a straw hut. The ground was dirt. It was all about like functionality and using the materials that they had to build this foundation that would withstand the external weather. So then that's the first thing I thought about. I'm like, okay, well, nothing for my parents really that I would consider like interior design. Like when I think about interior design, it's like mixing like functionality plus the aesthetic. Like that to me, like mirroring the two to reflect the person that lives in the home, that to me is what interior design is all about. And I think for my parents, and when they were growing up, there was no like aesthetic part. It was just simply like, this is what's gonna like give us shelter and keep us safe. And I feel like my parents kept that when they came to the United States and they got us a house. Like it was just all about functionality. There was really nothing like that I can remember that was pretty. I mean, I remember the houses I grew up in, and I would think like they were like really cool houses. Like I remember the brick house. I'm just gonna call it the brick house because the outside was brick. Like I thought that that house was so big, and I loved that it was a two-story house. So I remember going up and down the stairs, and I remember the attic was open, so we would play in there. Um, and I remember it had like a dining room. In my parents' room, they had these like huge, it was like these huge double doors that would go into my mom and dad's room. And I thought that that was so, just like so cool. So I remember it must be like my creative brain that makes me remember like these little details about this house that I grew up in. But in terms of like, yeah, did my mom decorate? Like, no, there were really no decorations. We needed a couch, so they just got a couch. There was no thought into it, right? Like we needed a table, so then they got a table. No thought into it. I mean, I don't even really remember eating at the dining room table because there were so many of us. I think I've said this before. There's 10 kids in my family. So to get a table to fit like 13 people, because my grandmother lived with us too, we would have needed a huge house. And my parents, they couldn't afford a huge house. So we didn't have like dinner at like a nice dining table. You just ate wherever there was room. So I guess all of that to say there was just a lot of functionality over aesthetic, of course. And there really was no aesthetic. But then I'm like, well, like, why do I care about like the pretty things then? right? And I thought about that. I'm like, well, it's because I have this mind that loves to create. So I remember, like, as a child, like, I would kind of live in my own world. And I remember when we moved from, like, the town that I grew up in to, like, a different town, this other town, like, we would have to pass through what I call the rich neighborhood to get to our house. And I just remember, like, imagining myself living in one of those rich houses, and, like, this is what the house would look like, and this is what my room would look like, and this is what it would feel like. So I think that that is where I got that part inside of me of like, yes, you need it to be functional from my parents, but also, like, this other thing, the pretty things, I also need that inside of me. So I feel like that was a long-winded answer to talk about what interior design was like when I was growing up, but I really wanted to give our viewers, like, a big picture. Now you go.
I know, I loved it. That was such a good description of interior design. It's like, functionality and beauty combined,
Mhm.
basically. And I
Yes.
love that. That's such a good definition. Um, I remember, I'll tell you what I remember. I grew up my early years in a wooden house. It had 2 rooms. The cows were right underneath us, and there was like a very small attic. So it was like, because it's a hilly country, so it's kind of like on a hill. So
Okay.
the basement is where the cows stayed. And then we
Mhm.
were on top, and there were 2 rooms, and there was like the wood burning stove in there.
Yep.
And in the winter, we would sleep there. This was like my first years while my parents were, and this was like us four and my grandma and grandpa and my like, so 7 people, my grandpa's sister too. And they had like this little, when you were entering, there was this kind of like like covered but open, not sides were open, kind of like a little porch, and then there was like a little like part there where they would keep things not to spoil. So it was like there was part of the house that was built outside that was kind of a bit colder in the
Mhm.
winter, so it wasn't in the warmth, so you could keep things so they wouldn't spoil, like milk and stuff, like storage, right?
An outdoor
So personal,
refrigerator.
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And then there was like the room that you would walk into that like we said, there was a table that they cooked at and we ate at, but it wasn't like family dinners. It was like one table next to the wall. I remember one bed, a wood burning stove that you cooked on and baked in, and everything was there. And later on, there was like this big cabinet. It wasn't fancy. There wasn't much fanciness there. They
Yeah.
had a radio and a TV. There was no fanciness. The other room had 2 couches and like some kind of like, clothes keeping ottomans and stuff. But that was it. And I think maybe crib at some point or something. There was not fanciness, but I don't remember that
Mhm.
much, that part, because this was when I was really little, up to 5,
Mm.
6. And we also spent a lot of time outside. Like
Yeah.
outside, it was beautiful running
Yeah.
around doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like I more remember adventures outside and inside the house. But
Yeah.
I remember in winter laying on that floor, like because it was so cold, we all would like put the blanket
Oh
and
my
put that and
gosh.
like on the floor. That's the part that I remember to stay warm. And then I, my parents built the house, like a brand new brick house, brick and mortar, They built it
Mhm.
from scratch. They worked really hard and we moved in. And a few years later, uh, the war happened and it burned down.
Mm.
I mean, you can't burn brick. So, like the parts of the rooms, the only room that stayed was mine. So they had to redo that. But what happened is like they worked so hard and everybody, comes together as family and they bought new furniture and people brought them new stuff and everything. And all that burned down. So it was kind of like bittersweet that they didn't even get to enjoy all of their new house. And I remember just that part, like rebuilding and all of that. So again, when we were rebuilding right after the war, there wasn't much decoration. There wasn't
Mm.
much fanciness. People
Mhm.
were putting pieces together. There was a lot of like, oh, I have this old piece, use it. This like,
Yeah.
just so you would, my dad is really good with his
Yeah.
hands, so he built um the sectional for us. They still have the same sectional that was built 20 years ago, but he built it by hand, and he built like clothes storage that's still, there and intact. And he does a lot of stuff, and he built all of that, and it's still all there. And I remember just what really makes me laugh a lot is our women, when my mom was even younger, they would knit a lot, knitting socks,
Mhm.
knitting like the little footy thingies and little like the big sweaters, everything. They were doing a lot of, and then later crocheting became fashionable. Those there were like these huge crocheting things that they would put on tables that were like
Mhm.
beautiful designs and flower and like some kind of intricate stuff. And then they had like the smaller ones that they would put everywhere, like, so I remember being a kid, and these things I really remember. They were so funny to me. They were everywhere. But then, eventually they got out of fashion. But here I come to America, and people who moved much earlier, they still love them and they still use them. And I would go into a
Mm.
bathroom and I would see that. I'm like, that still exists. And my mom was like, take some of these, right? Like it was like treasured because somebody invested time. And there was a whole
Yeah.
generation before me. I did not really get into it, but that did a lot of that. It was like stuff that girls did. And it just like was used as decoration. It was like a main way to decorate with
Mm.
that because it was really cheap to buy it, and then you made it yourself and you could design it, and
Yeah.
like there were patterns, and it was very
Uh,
intricate. I remember that. And I remember these open big I want to say what would they like kind of like shelves, but like the bottom usually they could be smaller or taller, but the bottoms were usually like with doors closed, right? For plates and stuff. And the top, many of them had open tops, and then they would cook little, like, because we drink Turkish coffee back home. They had their little Turkish coffee things, right? Like the newer ones. And then they would have their little glasses for alcohol because, they're big on that too. And like all sorts of like
oh.
cute little things. But the annoying thing is that would get so freaking dusty. A lot of them were open. Many of them
Yeah.
did not
Yep.
close. You had to take
Yep.
all that stuff out. It like took hours to clean. I just hated that part because it was all like it would get dusty. Then we would have to
Yeah.
take it. There's all
Yeah.
these little glasses, all these little cups, all these little, and then like you really, but like you would put the little crochet things underneath, and you would put that on top, and
Yeah.
make it look pretty.
Com-
And it's just like I remember those days, and it's kind of like, it's not that I'm living in that period of time in my life, but it's kind of
yeah.
nice to remember. It's like, oh look, that's it.
Absolutely.
And then I
Yeah.
came here, and I think I don't know, my sister-in-law had some of those and she put them on a table somewhere, and my husband's like, please take that away. I am sick of seeing those things, those little like crochets everywhere. He he was like, because some people really like put them in the toilets, put them on their couches, put them on their shelves. They were like on top of a TV. They were everywhere. So like he's like, please take them away. Take all the crochet things away. So that made me laugh so much, like remembering how he really wanted to like just hide all of her stuff so she would not put them out. But
That is
she
so
invested a
funny.
lot of work in that. That was like her pride. She's like, look what I did. Took a lot of work. But yeah, that's what I remember being a kid, like, and growing up. That's the memories that I have.
Mm.
And it's nice to remember these things. And I think I'm for planning to go back home this summer, so I'm excited to see what
Mhm.
is happening now,
That
right?
is so
Because I kind of
cool.
see it a little bit. My mom still has like this big thing with glass that she stores her little cups and glasses. And I have a kitchen that has like two huge pillars with like my glasses inside, and she was so happy when she saw all the glasses when she came. All like the different kinds of glasses that we have. And she's like, you have all the glasses. And it just makes them happy. All the glasses and having all that stuff. It's like, I don't know. I think for many years people didn't have that. So it just makes you feel a little like, oh, you can afford that because that feels luxury, right? And I just hate it because I just have to constantly wash it. I'm like, darn it, these
Mm.
glasses get so dusty. I'm so not happy with them. But my mom was very happy with my glasses.
Aw. I loved all of that. And I took a couple of notes while I was hearing you speak. Um, and I want to go over here. So I wrote down what makes a home because you basically just described it to us. And it wasn't directly through words, but it's like I heard it through your emotion. I heard it through the way you like expressed yourself. And I'm bringing this up because I don't think I said this, but then I am a home curator and I help people design their homes. And so a lot of times when people come to me, they tell me, gosh, this just feels like an empty space. Like I want that homey feeling. I want it to feel like home. I want it to be cozy. And you described home so perfectly. I heard happy. I heard and felt like heartwarming. I heard welcoming and inviting. I heard joy. I heard memorable. I heard luxurious. And I also heard home is like a place that you can just like literally sink into, melt into. And I think nowadays that that is what people want when they come to me. Like, oh my gosh, this just doesn't feel like home. Like all of that stuff that you just described to me so perfectly, that is what they are looking to achieve. And I think the thing that's really important to point out here is like all of those are basically feelings, right? So our home environment, like the products that we put into our house, how we set up our house, the layout, and I want to say the cleanliness as well of our home, plus the people that live there, plus whatever's on the wall, all of that contributes to these feelings that make home home. Would you agree with that, Maria?
I would. I did not think of that, and you presented it so well. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna cry now. I get emotional listening to it. Seriously. Um, but I totally agree. I agree that it's the emotion that we always look like we want it. And I think
Amazing.
what had
Yes.
happened is all this, a lot of we're buying furniture and we kind of see these set up rooms and we're kind of our eyes get used to seeing things the certain way. And how we're sold things, we get used to see it and we buy into it. And then we buy this perfectly white and perfectly this and perfectly that stuff that looks great in the pictures. But then we put it in and it doesn't feel like home. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna tell you what makes my home home right now.
Do it.
Because my house, when we were setting it up, it was our first house. And we
Mm-hmm.
set it up a little bit like, almost like too perfect, right? Like
Mm.
almost like to that point where like I bought what I thought looked good, especially being immigrants, and we did not grow up that way, right? My apartment was
Yeah.
small, so it felt more homey because it had to house everything the two of us had. And
Yeah.
also I was more creative, but because this was home, I tried to be more serious, and it came out like a little bit of a catalog. It came out like a little bit of
Mm.
like, it looked pretty,
Yeah.
but it didn't have that soul, it didn't have the emotion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I think that's what
Yeah.
happens with a lot of people. You buy the pretty stuff
Agree.
and then you don't have the emotion there because it
Yes.
just looks like it's in still in a catalog. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like home. What makes my home home now is the clutter and the freaking toys everywhere
Right. Right.
and the mess and like the cups left and
Yeah.
the water and the candy. And I'm like, always don't leave this candy here. But it's like, this is
Yes.
where humans live. They're like the smell of
Yes.
food that my father-in-law does. The fact that my mother-in-law is short, she
Mm.
can't put stuff on the high shelf, so she like puts them on a microwave, then I have to put them away. And it's like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes it feel so good. Like the fridge full of my kids' stuff, like kids'
Mm-hmm.
activities and all that stuff. It's like, okay, now it feels like home. When it was just the two of us and we just bought it and it was brand new, it had no personality. And now I'm like, oh yeah, like there's where this is like the wall we can't clean because somebody got that real Sharpie not those water cleaning thingies. And he wrote on the wall. So now this wall, we all know who did that one, right? Like, but it's like it gives it
Yeah.
personality. And I'm almost like,
Yes.
no, it's how I want it.
Mm. See, again, I just like felt that warm, like that warmth, just basically like coming off of you. Like that was your energy. Like, oh my gosh, it's like my family, these people, they're really the ones that make it home. And it's not the product. And so many times, like people fixate on the product, but what they don't understand about interior design is it's a phase, right? It's interior design is a phase, it is a process, and depending on what phase of life you're at, that's really how your home should be mirrored, so you don't feel like, oh, I can't sit on that couch, or this is going to get ruined, or this needs to be like that. And when you are able to almost like mirror your life to how you want your home to look and feel like, that's when harmony, that's when that cozy feeling, that's when that homey feeling is able to be created and replicated continuously in your home.
I'm like, Coua, where were you when I was buying glass tables right before I had children? I'm
I
like,
wasn't
that
even
was not
doing this
thought of
yet.
well. I'm like, yeah, but they're
Right.
okay now because there's little fingerprints on them and everything. But it's just like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't like you
That's things
adjust
that you don't
furniture
think
to
about
you.
though.
Yeah,
Right.
because
It's
you're thinking like pretty pictures. It's like fashion. It's
correct.
as if you're buying clothes that's
Yes,
fashionable
exactly.
just because they're fashionable and not buying clothes that fits your body. Because buying furniture just because it's
Yes.
pretty and it's fashionable, and you're not thinking of your life, and you're not thinking
Yes.
for
Yes.
your
Yes. Yes.
kids, and you're not thinking, and it's like now
Right.
when you're in it and you're like, okay, this is what my kids need. This
Right.
is what I want. My
Yeah.
family member just bought some couches, and these couches are like this, but then you can like open them all the way, and they can be
Mm-hmm.
like little bed play. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is perfect for kids, and then they have storage underneath. I'm like, this is
Wow.
so good, but it's like, you know, before you have kids and you're buying it, it's like almost like, that would be good to know that
Mm-hmm.
maybe I could buy couches that the kids can lay on and roll around on, and like, right, it's just you don't think sometimes about it. You think about the fashion and how it's gonna look
Right.
pretty.
Right. And the other thing I would say too to keep in mind is that like fashion changes, right? Interior
Oh
design
my God,
changes. And
yes.
not only that, you are constantly changing. You are like an evolving human being. So like don't put so much focus on your product because guess what? In 2 years or less, or maybe a little bit more, you're not gonna like that couch anymore. Your life is
Yeah,
going to be different. So all that to say, like, don't put so much emphasis on I gotta get the perfect couch, the perfect rug, make this room perfect, because you're not going to like it in 2 years. It's going to change.
yeah. It's not gonna stay always the same. My husband really wants to paint our kitchen white, and our
Ooh.
kitchen is kind of wooden right now. And I'm like, no.
Mm.
He's like, why not? I'm like, we have older people who cook and young people who touch everything. We're not making the kitchen white. And he's like, but it looks so good. And because he's a painter, right? So he's like, but I see it
Mm.
everywhere. And like, this is like, and I'm like, I don't care what's trendy. I can't see the little fingerprints everywhere now. It's not driving me nuts. We're not
So
painting this
funny.
white.
Oh my gosh.
But
Can
I guess I
I?
learned my lesson with my glass tables now. So it's like now I'm like,
That's so
no, we're not.
funny. Oh my gosh. I like want to convince you to paint it white.
Shush, you're not making it.
My kitchen, and
That
I
would
have kids,
not
and
be
we
homey.
cook. We totally cook. Like we have most meals at home. So
Yes,
it's
my
like I just want to
father-in-law cooks every
put it
day.
out there that like white is manageable. And like the fingerprints, I feel like it's a phase too. And like when we first moved in, I Maria, like I would literally see them, especially by my younger daughter's room, like what the heck? Like, you're pushing off the wall before you get into your bedroom, or what is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
they
then,
do.
like,
They touch everything.
now I don't even like, now they don't even do that anymore. We've been in this house, it'll be 3 years this year, and everything is white. And I think at the beginning, yep, like I would see everything, but now I don't think the kids are really like touching, doing all this to the walls as much. It's definitely calmed down. And even like on my couch, like it's definitely a lighter color, but I just made sure that I could remove the covers. Like I knew I wanted a lighter couch because that would satisfy my need, but I needed it to be like really something that I could remove and just throw into the wash because I know my kids are gonna sit here and
Yeah.
use it as well.
The house is for kids as it is
Yeah.
for you, right? So it's
Right,
like
right, right.
everybody needs to be happy.
Yes.
I'm not, I cannot do, don't touch this, don't do that, don't touch this, don't do that.
Same.
And like, I understand some people have specific rules.
Mhm.
My kids, it's a different system. So like, we do have specific rules. Like, they're like, give me popcorn, and then they sit on the floor because they know they cannot, it's gonna be everywhere, right?
Funny.
So
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
know what they need to do. But it's like everybody has different rules, and I just like to make my life easier. So I'm like, no white kitchen for now. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, you gotta do what's best for
Yeah.
you and your family
So
at
what
this
makes
time.
your house a home right now? I'm curious.
Mm, um, the people, that was the first thing that popped into my head. Like I thought about, I saw their faces, like my husband, my kids, our dog. Oh my gosh, what else? I feel like this is such a loaded question for me, but the people definitely. And the other thing that's coming up inside of me is like the feeling. And I'm not even sure what feeling it is for me, but I just love being home. And I know it's because I think the feeling is this, it's safety. It's because I feel really safety and I feel accepted. And I think the third word would be free. Like
Mm,
that is what is coming up inside me and why it's so easy for me to be home despite, like, I'm going to tell you what I see right now, okay? There's tractors to my right, and then there's another tractor and more toys to my left. There are blankets that are basically just thrown on the couch. They're not even folded or anything. And there's like another bag of toys over there that we're going to donate, but it's still just sitting there. And it's like, despite all of this, like what would be chaotic to a lot of people, it's almost like it doesn't even register in my brain anymore because I know that this is my safe place and those things cannot disrupt my safety.
would you even say that they're part of your safety? That like, these people live here with you. It's almost like
Mm,
it gives you that.
yeah, I think so because it's like I know they're coming home to me, right? Like they're a part of it. And it's like the toys, that's just so external. Like I feel safe if they're out here. If they're not, I don't really care. But yeah, the
Nice.
people are definitely a part of my safety and the acceptance and the freedom. And it's almost like I just feel so at peace in my home. And
Did you
yes,
design your home on purpose? Like, are you guys doing it like, is it, yeah,
yes,
nice.
yep. So then we built our home in 2019 and it's a custom home. So then we designed it all ground up. And
Nice.
it was like, I really advise everyone to go through that process. Even if you don't do a custom home, like go through a semi build, because then it's like you really get to put your hands into it. And I think that will really like just help. I feel like it helped my husband and I grow as a couple and even like our family get closer because then we bring our kids to see the process. And it's like, oh wow, it really did. Like we were gathering here before it was really even a gathering place. And then you
Wow.
just get to see it grow from the ground up. And I really feel like we're growing. It's like we're growing up in this house. And to get to see my son, like he was just a baby when we moved in here. Like, wow, we're growing with this house. It's so fun.
So beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that. That's beautiful.
thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go through more of my notes here.
All right, go for
Before
it.
you were talking about going back to your story, how like after the war, you're like, yeah, so then basically people just had to take things from where they could get and make it their home, right? Like, okay, I can get a coat from here, I have to build this, and then your mom and then like crocheted the stuff. So I just thought about that. I'm like, that is still the design process that basically I go through, right? Like, yeah, I might buy something from the store that's already made, but guess what? I'm also gonna look on Facebook Market. And guess what? I'm also gonna do some DIY stuff. And guess what? I'm also gonna print some pictures that I already have, and that's really easy to put on the wall. So I'm like, that's still what the design, how to gather the materials for the design process. It comes from so many different directions. And I guess I'm sharing that because like, don't get stuck. Like it needs to come from this store because that's something that I've like gotten stuck on. Like, oh, I really want this console table. So I'm not gonna buy anything. I'm not gonna spend any money until I get this console table. But what I've realized in doing that to myself is like, well, my home stopped feeling like home then because I became so fixated on that one particular product. And the thing that I really actually just wanted was like, I really want the space to be filled up because when the home is filled, then that's when it feels like, oh my gosh, like I really like this space. And as long as I love the thing, why does the price matter? And why does where it's coming from matter? Like I could find something. If I could find something on Facebook Market at a price that I can afford, why not do that now? Versus just waiting and waiting and waiting. It's almost like I'm prolonging my happiness in a sense. Do you ever like feel like that?
Yes, yes. We are prolonging our happiness right now with the TV.
Are you getting a new TV?
No, I'm just kidding. But not really kidding, because our old TV
Mm,
with the new with the new Fire Stick loses volume
yeah.
every once in a while. And every
Mm.
time it does, we're like, oh, we're gonna buy new TV. And then it works. And then we're like, we forget about it until it
Never
doesn't
mind.
work again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
the kids are like, so when are we gonna buy the new TV? And I'm like, I don't know.
Oh,
But when
that's
it
so
doesn't work
funny.
longer.
Oh my gosh. Like speaking of TVs, Maria, so we don't have a TV in our house right now because the last one, it stopped working, I want to say maybe a month or two ago. And then we're just like, nope, we're not getting another TV because one, we like, so the way we did our house was we did not want, at least I did not want a TV on the main floor. We would eventually just have a TV projector like downstairs in the basement once we finish it. So then my husband and I were just like, no, we're just not going to get another TV because it just doesn't make sense. And I just feel like this is like a recurring theme in our family because I remember at our first house, there was a period where that first TV that we brought to the house, it died. And then we just went like, I don't even remember how long without having a TV. And now that same thing is happening again. And that it's almost goes to show like, well, you don't really need a TV to survive, right? To function.
No, I don't think my in-laws would
Uh,
agree with
uh,
you. These are
my
older people
in-laws
who are
wouldn't
home.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, that this is different generational difference. Certain, the
Hmm.
older people, they want to watch news, they want to watch their show, they want to watch whatever the cooking show, whatever they're watching, they want to watch it. Their Turkish soap opera, and they have their schedule. And but I think younger generations less and less need TV because there's other devices we can entertain ourselves on.
Yes.
Certainly. But
Yes,
no,
yes, yes.
I understand that prolonged waiting, uh, because sometimes there's and this is cultural. I think this is like a period we have to adjust as immigrants. For us back home, my mom, I think, took, I don't know, from some aunt or somebody else, like one piece of the furniture and like all of that after the war. But people get very prideful to buy their own, to have their own. It's like they've really it's like because they're like, we earned it, we bought it, it's ours. And
Mm,
there's not many things back home, but there's, I think, a bit more quality. There's not a lot of choices here. Like you can't go to Menards. There's not like, oh no, or like a huge store many times. But there's, I think, more quality in smaller stores. So when people do
mm,
buy it, it lasts really long time, and they really take care of it because it's not easy to buy it as easy as it's here, where we just like sometimes get circled through furniture and stuff. But
mhm.
also, it's very prideful to buy it. So for us to like go for a long time, I was against people giving me stuff. I would not like. My sister-in-law was like, I
Mm,
have these beds. I'm like, no, I'm gonna buy new beds. I wouldn't
mm.
like. It was not like, no, I can afford it. I'm gonna buy it. It was like a more like, yeah, I have enough money. I can buy this. And then later I'm like, wait a minute, who said they have beds? Like, why?
Save me some money here.
It's because like I'm not actually. I think it stopped being about the money. It was more about, you have to go, you have to spend time there, you have to like, and then looking at these, they're exactly what I need. If they
Yep.
were not what I needed, it was like something totally random, I of course you would take it. But I noticed that this happens with a lot of immigrants where we do not like kind of hand me downs. We want to have that pride of buying our own and having our own,
Mm,
because especially from where I'm from, for many years we couldn't.
yeah.
You couldn't afford it, you didn't have
Yeah.
it, and just being able to do it, it just kind of like, brings that emotion of like, oh yeah, I'm succeeded. And I think at certain point in time, you kind of stop being past that emotion, and it's always good to be like, okay. I did the same thing with, like, for example, my kids' clothes. They were like, oh yeah, I have my son's clothes, and I never used to want to
Mhm.
wear. And I'm like, I have three boys. Yes, clothes that does not have holes and big stains, I will take it. Because
Right?
it's all from family members, right? But I used to be really like, no, we will not wear something,
Mm,
because I grew up mostly, many times, not always, but many times wearing a lot of hand-me-downs, right?
yep.
So I was like, no, we can afford it. I don't want to do that. And it was because you could not afford it. And here it's like,
Yeah.
no, this is not because you can't afford it. This is because I have three kids who are constantly in and out and dirty and messy and
Yeah.
everything. It's like, why not take something that somebody wore two, three times?
Yep. 100%. And I think to add on to that, like what I was hearing was it's almost like it sounds a little bit like generational trauma, but it also sounds like a story that we created within ourselves because of the way that we grew up. I have a similar experience, right? Like growing up, like I remember only getting new clothes once a year. And I think besides that, like everything was from the thrift store. But to add on to like that, like how we kind of got that story that, okay, if I can afford something new, I'm just going to buy it. I feel like the other story that I see within my parents is like, I have to have this thing until it's like shreds, or like even when it shreds, I have to keep keeping it because I don't know when I'm gonna get it again. And I've been very conscious with myself about that because my parents, I think we've talked about this before too, like they just don't throw anything away. And I I see myself like being like that, even like with food, like, oh my God, let's not be wasteful. But it's like, wait, I think this is just all kind of like stemming from what I grew up with, what's basically in my DNA that's been passed down to me from so many generations, that I have this thing inside me where it's like, I have to keep everything, even things that I don't use anymore. And over the years, I think with owning a home, you really see how things really stack up. And when you move, you know how much stuff there's to clean up. So I think from that experience, it's really helped me like just learn how to let go of things that are basically no longer serving me or no longer needed in my house. And even with like food items, like, no, you do not have to eat your whole plate of food. If you're full, we can stop eating and we can throw the food away. The food did its purpose. Does any of
Oh,
that resonate with you?
so much. So me personally, I have two parents that are a little bit. My dad, I wouldn't say he's not thrifty, but he's not as thrifty as my mom. He's very wise about his things, but he's not like save, 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 save. My mom, because of the war and everything, and sanctions, no food, no money to
Yeah.
buy clothes, all of that. And we also, I remember, have like even buy clothes, new clothes once a year for many years. Like sometimes if my mom had a little bit more, she would. This is when I was in high school. I remember she treated me a little bit more once in a
Mm,
while. But mostly
yeah.
growing up as kids, it was like you would get that new pair, one or two pairs of pants, and that was what you wore. Like, and then you would
Hmm.
have some hand-me-downs if you were lucky.
Yeah.
Some, and it was. I'm not saying that it was bad, but you do
Right.
get into that like, and then when you get out of it, you kind of don't want to. And wearing clothes until it has holes, my mom still and my mother-in-law still, it's like they have full closets where you can't open clothes because it's like they were raised that you wear clothes until it has holes, and when it has holes, you patch them and you wear them some more. And I'm like, country, you're wasting more money on space
Space.
than the
Yes.
clothes cost.
Mm.
Because shirt is like $5. We can buy a new shirt, but they don't get. My mom back home
Yeah.
still has like huge closets of clothes she will not throw out. If she does throw
Yeah.
something out, my dad runs back in the backyard and burns it. It's like she's gonna change her mind and take it back. I am not like that. I'm more like my dad, and I like to clean it out. I don't like clutter. Drives me nuts.
Mhm.
But I do understand that like you need to wear it till it has holes. You need to like, and the saving. And when my mom was here, she just could not. I
Yeah.
feel bad sometimes still. In the beginning, I definitely felt worse, like making
Yeah.
food and throwing it away. And then, buying so much food that sometimes like, vegetable or fruit will go bad.
It'll go
And
bad. Yeah.
like, even like I remember wasting water. Like, why is that water? Or like back home, turning lights off. And I was like, okay, we're not that crazy. Like, I know this is why I'm doing it. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
But it took a really long period of time for me to like just relax about a lot of things. Because
Mm.
there is that you're saving light, you're saving water, you don't have it.
Mhm.
You don't like, you don't want to pay for it,
Yeah.
even if you have
Mhm.
capability of having it. And I know it's not an easy mentality to get
Mm.
out of all of that saving. And my mom,
So good.
she had so much trouble with how much food we throw out.
Gosh.
But
Oh.
again, here it's a different ball game. Here
Yeah.
we don't have time. So many times it's like you're saving time and you're doing things without like exactly planning it to a T and exactly being very precise and all of that. It's like my time is more valuable than food. So it's kind of like when it
Mm.
comes down to that, it's like I am doing things this way that works for me right now
Yeah.
versus I'm trying to save every dime but doing everything. And it's like because we live in a different country, but being
Yeah.
immigrants and
Yeah.
moving, it's like an adjustment period. And it's like it still shows up. I've realized
Absolutely.
my mother will kill me if she ever hears that. But when we were little, she would not buy herself new underwear. She will murder me. Because she's like, you guys need school stuff and you need new socks because socks are the worst, right? Once you get a hole in a sock, there's no fixing that
No.
stinker. So
Yeah.
she had to buy us new stuff, right? You couldn't walk around because it was also for culture that didn't have. It was very embarrassing to be around with holes. So shameful. Like it was like, oh, you don't have it. You felt so
Yeah.
bad if that happened. And here it's like people who have a lot of money would like have holes in their socks and they don't give a crap. It means nothing about them. But for us,
Right.
it's so loaded because we don't have it. And it's
Mm.
like it's horrible. But she would not throw out her underwear and not buy herself new underwear. And me and my dad would like sneakily try and throw out her underwear so
So
we
funny.
would make her buy new one. But then I find myself being a mom now, and I'm like, hey, it's fine. And I'm like, oh my God, I am
Yeah,
turning into my mother.
same. I've had those same moments. And even with underwear, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is freaking from high school. I can get rid of this. I have the money to go to the store and buy it.
Yeah, but it's like, it's that mentality, but it's not worn out and it fits me. It's like, why would I? But it's like exactly like this has been like here for 10 years. And many times,
Yeah.
even the clothes that doesn't fit right and you don't wear it, it's like, well, this is good for emergencies.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a little
Yeah.
itchy. It has like a little bad, like,
Yeah.
they did sew it nice. So it's like that. And it's like, I'll keep it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my
In
mother.
case. Right.
In
And
case for emergency.
it's like we're either living from lack, and I feel like that's our parents, and that's just what they grew up with, and that's what we adapted. But then we are also learning to live from abundance. And those are like the two clear distinctions that I kept hearing when you were talking, like, yep, living from lack or living from abundance. And lack, I think the living from lack for me, it was a lot of just like conditioning, right? Like I didn't know that I was being so conditioned, and that I basically just adapted it to be my way of living. And now it's like, okay, I gotta decondition all of that, because that's not really the story I want to be telling myself. And I want to live from this place of abundance. And I'm bringing this up because when you live from this place of abundance, you're just gonna feel that much happier in your home. Like bringing it back to the home and interior design. I think interior design is definitely about living from abundance, because guess what? If you buy that couch that you can't afford, you're not going to be living from abundance. So you're still not going to feel happy in your home.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say. Sometimes living from lack and abundance, they can feel almost opposite and you can be confused by it.
Yeah.
Because
Yes,
it's like
yes,
when you're
yes.
thinking like, I have so much and it's like sometimes having so much is almost like gets overcrowded or gets over expensive or it gets like to a point where it's like it can be coming from abundance, can be coming from lack. When you
Yes.
bring so much, it's
That's
like
what I heard.
you
Mm-hmm.
need it. You feel that you need more. You feel that you need this. You feel that you need that because you don't think that you have. And sometimes I've worked with some very rich people in my lifetime. And
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing is, like, you know what? Who takes the work most constantly? Food to work most constantly? The people who have the most money. Because it's not
Yeah.
about them like, oh, I can go buy lunch. I don't
Go
care. I
out to
have
eat. Yeah.
students are always buying lunch, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. But they're always complaining how they don't have money, right? But you're buying from that lack, you're constantly buying small things. And these people who do have money, they're like, I just want to eat a good lunch. And they don't care if, like, they could buy lunch, but they want to make what they want to make. And like, it's interesting how it's as if like you're buying a house because you're like, I have so much money and I want to prove that I have money and I'm gonna buy this big house. And but it's really above your budget, so you're overspending, so you can't do anything else. So you're basically like coming from that lacking. This is
Energy.
not enough, and I
Mm-hmm.
am not enough, so I need more and I need to
To
show
fill
others.
it. Yes.
And it's just money. And it doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
good at the end.
No, no. Oh, this was so good. And I love that we're ending here, because I think the energy from which you are coming at designing your home, picking out the objects, everything to do with your home, that's really what matters most. Like, and you'll know that you're spot on if it's coming from love. Like if you're going to hire an interior designer, if you want to do that because it's like, gosh, I care about my family so much, I really want to make this space that's conducive for all of us, you know that that's going to turn out really good, versus like, oh my God, I hate this place and I need it to just like change or whatever. That's going to be like your experience of working with someone to help you make a space that you love is just going to be So different.
But also what I want to say is like, I think this is like many times people are like, oh yeah, it's one of those things where people are almost like, oh, I don't really need that. I can do this on my own. And it's like, it's not that you need it, but the experience and what you get is of immense value, because you don't, like, for example, if you were me 6 7 years ago when I was buying my house and I had a designer, I was like, hey, I'm pregnant and I'm buying a house, they would be like, honey, don't buy those glass tables. It's like something you can store toys in, right? Like, it's like
Yes.
they know, because
Yeah.
sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I can buy furniture myself, I know how to pick colors, and it's like,
Yeah.
but having somebody help you with it
Yes. 100%.
and guide you who's done it, it's almost like they're gonna consider stuff that you don't even think about.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That is exactly it.
And
I
I'm like,
mean,
why you need to come to my house and figure out how the heck to store all the toys?
I cannot wait. I would love to. And that just made me think about like, this is why exactly why I would also hire my own interior designer. Yeah, I can do it myself, but there's just so many blind spots because I live in my house that I probably don't even see because now I've just become accustomed to it. So it's
Right?
so good to like get like a set of like fresh eyes that have a different perspective to come in and be like, okay, this is what I would do. Like, ooh, I love that. And I love design so much because it's, to me, it's like this beautiful collaboration. And it's
Yeah.
like when you find that, like that, it's almost like it's like the lock and the key. When you guys find that perfect, I want to use the word perfect, like that perfect match and that vibration that you're both feeling, it just, that collaboration, the end result, the person's home, the client's home, it just turns out like so beautifully.
Okay, I'm gonna sell you now. I'm like, it's just like me and you. We fit perfectly. And if you guys want to design house, just contact
Yeah.
Coua and she'll hook you up.
Yes, contact
I'm like,
me.
I'm selling you here, girl, because she's
Come
really
check
good.
me
She's done it.
out.
And you know
I'm
what?
on
Probably along the
Instagram.
way, she's like, being a coach, I know how you work. She's like probably coaching along the way a little
There
bit.
is a little bit of coaching along the way. Like a recent client like was really stuck on the product and it's just like, okay, well, I just had to again explain like, okay, it's not about interior design, it's not about the product, but yeah, I understand like how important it is. Just remember it's the process and you're evolving, so like just don't put so much emphasis on it. There's a lot of coaching, and then like with the, you're making a lot of decisions, so then I notice people get decision fatigue, so it's like, okay, let's refocus, let's take a little break from this, step away, and then we'll come back. Or I like to just like really give my clients like directness, right? Like we're only focusing on these two things. And until we find them, like do not think about anything else. I feel like that helps a lot of people versus like you feel really overwhelmed when you think about what a room needs. This, and this. The list like goes on. But it's like when you have someone there telling you, like, this is what we're looking at, and that's it. I just find that to be so helpful.
Let's end here. Go
Okay.
find Coua on her Facebook page
Yeah.
for like a lot of cool interior design photos and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah. Come find me, my
thank you
page.
for listening, all of you.
Yes. Thank you for listening. CC Interiors. That's me. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram.
This was lovely, Coua.
This was so
We had
fun.
so much fun.
Yes. Thank you for listening. Bye, everyone.